Most men learn their wife's cheating from a lipstick stain or a suspicious credit card bill. Me? I got a VIP gala photo and a voicemail that would make a tabloid editor weep with joy. My name is Adam Kingman, and I spent 12 years in Special Forces before trading my combat boots for a security consultant's badge in Baltimore. At 39, I thought I'd seen every kind of betrayal the world could offer. I was wrong. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The photo arrived on a Tuesday morning, slipped under my office door like a final verdict. There was my wife, Olivia, radiant in her emerald cocktail dress, wrapped around Tom Beale like he was her personal life preserver. Tom, the golden boy who owned the boutique security firm across town, the one with connections stretching from City Hall to the country club. I studied the image with the same methodical attention I'd once used to analyze enemy positions. Olivia's hand rested on Tom's chest, her wedding ring catching the camera flash like a tiny beacon of irony. Her smile wasn't the polite, professional one she wore at her events management job. This was the smile she used to give me. The voicemail came 3 hours later. Adam, darling. Her voice dripped with the kind of condescension usually reserved for slow children and parking attendants. I know you've probably seen the photos by now. Someone at the charity gala was quite the photographer. Look, let's not make this messier than it needs to be. File for divorce. Tom's friends are the best lawyers in town, and frankly, you'll get nothing anyway. I've been planning this for months. She paused, and I could hear Tom's laughter in the background, along with the clink of champagne glasses. Oh, and Adam, pack light. The townhouse is in my name, remember? The message ended with her signature laugh, the one that used to make my chest tight with affection. Now it just made my jaw clench. I leaned back in my office chair, surrounded by the tools of my trade, surveillance equipment, background check files, and a coffee mug that read, World's Most Paranoid Husband. Olivia had given me that mug last Christmas. The irony wasn't lost on me. My assistant knocked and entered without waiting for permission. Kenna Mallory had worked with me for 3 years, ever since she'd left military intelligence with a medical discharge and a chip on her shoulder the size of Fort Knox. She was 40-something, built like a marathon runner, and had a talent for reading people that bordered on supernatural. You look like someone just told you Santa Claus was a war criminal, she said, settling into the chair across from my desk. What's eating you? I slid the photo across the desk. Kenna studied it with the same clinical detachment she brought to all our cases. Well, that's unfortunate, she said finally. Though not entirely surprising. Your wife's been acting like a woman with secrets for months. You noticed? Adam, I'm a trained investigator. Also, she started wearing perfume to the grocery store and bought lingerie from Victoria's Secret 3 times in the past month. Unless you've been having a very active romantic renaissance, the math doesn't add up. I played the voicemail on speaker. Kenna listened without expression, though I caught the slight tightening around her eyes when Tom's laughter echoed through the office. Charming, she said when it finished. So what's the plan? Quiet divorce? Public scandal? Or are we going with the nuclear option? I stared out the window at the Baltimore skyline, watching the afternoon sun glint off the harbor. Somewhere out there, my wife was probably planning her new life with Tom Beale, dividing up my assets like spoils of war. She gave me 24 hours to change my mind and apologize, I said slowly. Seems only fair I return the courtesy. Kenna's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Now you're talking my language. What do you need? Everything. Financial records, communication logs, travel receipts. I want to know what they've been doing, where they've been doing it, and how much of my money they've spent doing it. And then? I picked up my phone and scrolled to Olivia's number. My thumb hovered over the call button for a long moment before I pressed it. The phone rang twice before she answered. Adam, I hope you're calling to tell me you found a lawyer. Actually, I'm calling to give you the same courtesy you gave me, I said, my voice steady as concrete. You have 24 hours to change your mind and apologize. After that, all bets are off. Her laugh was sharp and dismissive. Apologize? For what? Finding someone who actually appreciates me? Someone with ambition and connections? Tom's already introduced me to half the city council, Adam. I'm moving up in the world. 24 hours, Olivia. Or what? You'll pout? You'll drink beer and watch ESPN in some sad apartment? Face reality, Adam. You're a security guard with delusions of grandeur. Tom owns 3 buildings downtown and has lunch with the mayor. There's no contest here. The line went silent. I set the phone down carefully, the way you might handle a live grenade. Kenna was already pulling out her laptop. I take it she declined your generous offer. She did indeed. Excellent. I do my best work when the target is particularly deserving. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. I'll start with the financial forensics. You might want to call Dutch and Elliot. Something tells me we're going to need all hands on deck for this one. Colonel Dutch DeLay had been my commanding officer for 6 years, and my friend for longer than that. After retirement, he'd parlayed his military experience into running a nonprofit for veteran services. At 60, he was still built like a tank and had a strategic mind that would make Patton weep with envy. Elliot Griggs was my lawyer, a criminal defense attorney with a sardonic sense of humor and a win rate that made prosecutors break out in cold sweats. We'd met when he successfully defended one of my former teammates on assault charges that should have been dismissed as creative problem solving. I made the calls. Both men agreed to meet at my office within the hour. While I waited, I walked through my townhouse one last time, seeing it with new eyes. The hardwood floors Olivia had insisted on, the granite countertops that cost more than my first car, the wedding photos lining the mantelpiece, each one now looking like evidence in a fraud case. In our bedroom, I found the jewelry box where she kept her wedding ring during her work events. It was empty now, but the velvet impression remained, like a tiny grave for our marriage. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Heard about your wife's situation. Tom's a good guy. Maybe you should just let this one go. A friend. I showed the message to Kenna when I returned to the office. Tom's getting nervous, she observed. That's encouraging. Nervous people make mistakes. Dutch arrived first, his silver hair military precise and his handshake firm enough to crack walnuts. Elliot followed 10 minutes later, carrying a briefcase that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. So, Dutch said, settling his bulk into a chair that creaked in protest. I hear your wife decided to trade up? She thinks she did, I replied. Turns out Tom Beale has friends in high places and deep pockets. Had, Elliot corrected, pulling out a tablet. I did some preliminary research on Mr. Beale after your call. His business is leveraged to the eyeballs, and 3 of his biggest clients are currently under federal investigation for bid rigging on city contracts. Kenna looked up from her laptop. That explains the champagne and confidence. If those contracts get voided, Tom's going to need a very good bankruptcy attorney. What about Olivia? I asked. Your wife has been busy, Kenna said, turning her screen toward us. Credit card records show regular charges at the Marriott downtown, always on weekday afternoons. Hotel restaurant, room service, and what appears to be a standing reservation for the penthouse suite. She's been using our joint account? Oh, it gets better. She's also been transferring money to a separate account. Small amounts, but consistent. $500 here, $1,000 there. Over the past 6 months, she's moved almost $30,000. Dutch whistled low. That's not affair money. That's escape money. Elliot was already taking notes. We can freeze the joint accounts immediately and file for asset recovery. If she's been planning this for months, like she said, there might be grounds for fraud charges. No, I said, holding up a hand. Not yet. If we move too fast, they'll lawyer up and disappear into the system. I want them to think they're winning right up until the moment they realize they've lost everything. What did you have in mind? Dutch asked, and I could hear the tactical interest in his voice. I looked at each of them, my former commander, my lawyer, and my investigator. 3 people who understood that sometimes the best defense was a perfectly executed offense. Olivia wanted a war, I said. Let's give her one. The next morning, I woke up in my office. Not by choice. Olivia had changed the locks on our townhouse sometime during the night. I discovered this at 6 a.m. when my key wouldn't turn, and my soon-to-be ex-wife appeared at the window in a silk robe, coffee mug in hand, smiling like she'd just won the lottery. She opened the window just wide enough for her voice to carry. I told you to pack light, Adam. There's a motel on Route 40 that takes weekly rates. This is still half my house, Olivia. Actually, it's not. Check the deed. I had Daddy co-sign when we bought it, remember? You're not on the paperwork. Her smile widened. Tom's lawyer was very thorough. I stood on what used to be my front porch, wearing yesterday's clothes and holding a coffee that had gone cold 3 hours ago, and realized I'd underestimated my opponent. That was a mistake I wouldn't make twice. Kenna found me at my desk an hour later, scrolling through property records on my laptop. Rough night? She asked, setting a fresh cup of coffee and a breakfast sandwich in front of me. Educational night. Turns out my wife's been planning this longer than I thought. The house, the bank accounts, even our cars. She's been systematically removing me from everything. Smart woman. Smart enough, but not smart enough to cover all her tracks. I turned the laptop toward her. Look at this. The screen showed a series of financial transactions dating back 8 months. Small transfers, consulting fees, and expense reimbursements, all flowing from Olivia's company to various accounts connected to Tom Beale's business. She's been funneling company money to him, Kenna observed. That's not just adultery. That's embezzlement. Gets better. See this? I pointed to a series of hotel charges. She's been billing client entertainment to the company, but the receipts show romantic dinners for 2 and penthouse suites. Her boss has been paying for her affair. My phone rang. Dutch's name appeared on the screen. "You need to see something," he said without preamble. "Meet me at Elliot's office in 30 minutes. Elliot's law firm occupied the top 3 floors of a downtown high-rise with a view of the inner harbor. His office was all dark wood and leather furniture, designed to intimidate opposing counsel and comfort clients with deep pockets. Dutch was already there when I arrived, along with a woman I didn't recognize. She was mid-40s, professionally dressed, with the kind of tired eyes that came from seeing too much of humanity's worst impulses. "Adam, meet Detective Sarah Chen," Elliot said. "She works financial crimes." "Mr. Kingman," Detective Chen said, shaking my hand, "I understand your wife has been having an affair with Tom Beale." "Among other things. Why is a police detective interested in my marital problems?" "Because Tom Beale is already on our radar. We've been investigating bid rigging in city contracts, and his name keeps coming up. If your wife has been funneling money to him through her company, that could be the evidence we need to build a case." I looked at Dutch, who shrugged. "I may have mentioned your situation to a few old friends. Sarah and I served together in Afghanistan before she joined Baltimore PD." "What exactly are you proposing?" I asked. Detective Chen opened a folder and spread several documents across Elliot's conference table. "We provide you with the resources to document your wife's financial irregularities. In exchange, you share anything you find that relates to Tom Beale's business practices." "Sounds like you want me to do police work without a badge." "I want you to protect your own interests while helping us protect the city's interests. Tom Beale has been stealing taxpayer money for 2 years. Your wife might be the key to proving it." Elliot leaned forward. "It's a good deal, Adam. Anything we find in the course of protecting your assets is admissible in court. And if Tom goes down for corruption, Olivia loses her meal ticket." I studied the documents. Financial records, surveillance photos, and what looked like a partial organizational chart with Tom's name at the center of a web of shell companies and dummy contracts. "What do you need from me?" "Access," Detective Chen said. "Your wife has been inside Tom's operation for months. She's seen things, heard conversations, maybe even participated in meetings. We need to know what she knows. She's not exactly speaking to me at the moment." "That's where we come in," Kenna said, appearing in the doorway with her laptop bag. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was murder." Dutch made introductions while Kenna set up her equipment on Elliot's conference table. "I've been busy this morning," she announced, pulling up a series of files on her laptop. "Our friend Tom has been very active since yesterday. 3 phone calls to lawyers, 2 meetings with accountants, and 1 very interesting conversation with someone at City Hall." "How do you know all this?" Detective Chen asked. Kenna's smile was enigmatic. "Tom's security firm uses the same software package we do for client communications. Unfortunately for him, he never changed the default encryption keys. His phone calls might as well be broadcast on the radio." She clicked through several audio files. Tom's voice filled the room, tense and worried. "Need to accelerate the timeline. Adam Kingman isn't going to roll over like we thought. Guy's ex-military, and he's got connections." "What kind of connections?" The second voice was unfamiliar. The kind that ask uncomfortable questions. "Look, just make sure the Patterson contract gets approved this week. Once that money hits our accounts, we can weather any investigation." Detective Chen leaned forward. "The Patterson contract is worth $12 million. If we can prove it was rigged..." "We can," I said, an idea forming. "But we need Olivia to give us the evidence." "She's not going to cooperate," Elliot pointed out. "She's got too much invested in Tom's success." "She will when she realizes Tom's been lying to her too." I turned to Kenna. "Can you access Tom's personal accounts? The ones Olivia doesn't know about?" Kenna's fingers flew across her keyboard. "Give me 20 minutes. While she worked, I called in a favor from another old friend. Marcus Webb ran a private investigation firm that specialized in corporate security. More importantly, he owed me for keeping him out of a Moroccan prison 3 years ago. "Adam," Marcus said when he answered, "please tell me you're calling with a job offer. Business has been slow." "Better. I'm calling with revenge. How quickly can you put together a surveillance package on someone?" "Depends on the someone and the package. What are we talking about?" "Full financial background, communication intercepts, and real-time location tracking. Target is Tom Beale, owns Beale Security Solutions downtown." Marcus whistled. "The golden boy with the city contracts? This is about your wife, isn't it?" "How did you..." "Word gets around in our business. Tom's been bragging about stealing another man's wife at every security contractors meeting for the past month. Made quite a few enemies, actually. A lot of us think he's an arrogant prick. Can you help? For you, I'd do it for free. But this is going to be fun, so I'll only charge you half rate. By the time Marcus arrived at Elliot's office, Kenna had cracked Tom's personal accounts. What we found was illuminating. 3 separate offshore accounts, she reported. Total balance of just over $2 million. Money's been flowing in from various sources, including several city contracts and... She paused, scrolling through transactions. Regular transfers from Olivia's company account. She's been paying him? Dutch asked. More than that. Look at this. Kenna highlighted a series of entries. Tom's been charging Olivia's company for security consultations that never happened, fake invoices, dummy services, the works. He's been systematically draining her employer's accounts. Detective Chen made notes furiously. That's wire fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. We can arrest him today. No, I said again. If you arrest him now, Olivia will claim she was a victim too. She'll get sympathy instead of consequences. What do you want to do? I looked around the room at my assembled team. A cop, a lawyer, a former colonel, and 2 of the best investigators in the city. Olivia thought she was playing chess while I was stuck playing checkers. Time to show her the difference. We're going to give them exactly what they want, I said. Tom gets his contract approval, Olivia gets her divorce, and then we're going to take it all away. Marcus grinned. Now you're talking my language. What's the timeline? Tom said they need the Patterson contract approved this week. That gives us 6 days to document everything, build an airtight case, and position ourselves for maximum impact. And Olivia? Elliot asked. I thought about my wife's smug smile that morning, her casual cruelty, the way she'd planned my destruction with the same attention she gave to her charity galas. Olivia's going to learn that betrayal is a 2-way street, and I've had a lot more practice driving on it than she has. The first shot across the bow came at 8:47 a.m. on Thursday morning. I know the exact time because I was watching through Marcus's surveillance feed when Tom Beale discovered his Porsche 911 blocked in the parking garage beneath his office building. My old pickup truck, the one Olivia always complained was an embarrassment, sat perpendicular across the exit ramp like a rusted middle finger pointed directly at Tom's German engineering. I watched him circle his car twice, looking for another way out, before his frustration boiled over. He pulled out his phone and started dialing, probably calling a tow truck or building security. That's when I stepped out from behind a concrete pillar. Morning, Tom, I said, my voice echoing in the underground garage. Nice car. Shame about the parking situation. He spun around, phone still pressed to his ear. Up close, Tom Beale looked exactly like Central Casting's idea of a successful young businessman. Expensive suit, perfect hair, and the kind of confident smile that came from never being told no by anyone who mattered. Adam. He ended his call without taking his eyes off me. I was wondering when you'd show up. Were you? That's thoughtful. I've been wondering about a lot of things lately. Like how a man steals another man's wife and then has the balls to send threatening text messages. I didn't send you any. Tom's a good guy. Maybe you should just let this one go. I quoted his message from memory. Ring any bells? Tom's confident facade cracked slightly. Look, this doesn't have to be complicated. Olivia's made her choice. You can accept that like a gentleman or what? I took a step closer. Tom was taller than me by 3 inches, but I'd learned a long time ago that height didn't matter as much as the willingness to use it. You'll have your lawyer friends make my life difficult. You'll use your city connections to run me out of town. I'm trying to be reasonable here. Reasonable? I nodded thoughtfully. Is it reasonable to steal money from city contracts? Is it reasonable to embezzle funds from my wife's company? Is it reasonable to threaten a man whose wife you're screwing? The color drained from Tom's face. I don't know what you think you know, but I know you've got offshore accounts in 3 different countries. I know you've been billing Olivia's company for services you never provided. And I know the Patterson contract you're so excited about is going to disappear faster than your fake invoices. I reached out and adjusted his tie, the gesture casual but unmistakably threatening. Here's what's going to happen, Tom. You're going to call Olivia and tell her that stealing my wife was the biggest mistake of your pathetic life. Then you're going to liquidate those offshore accounts and return every penny you stole from the city. You can't prove anything. Can't I? I pulled out my phone and played a recording of his conversation from the previous day. His voice filled the garage, discussing contract manipulation and timeline acceleration. Tom's face went from pale to ashen. That's illegal wiretapping. It's not admissible in court. You're right. but it doesn't need to be admissible in court to be interesting to the Baltimore Sun, or the FBI, or your other clients who might wonder what else you've been recording. I walked over to his Porsche and ran my hand along the pristine paint job. Beautiful car. Must have cost, what, $90,000? That's interesting, considering your business reported a loss last year on its tax returns. Without warning, I slammed my palm against his side mirror. The impact was sharp and sudden, and the mirror folded inward with a satisfying crack. Oops, I said. My mistake. Tom lunged toward me, anger finally overriding his caution. I caught his wrist and twisted, using his momentum to spin him around and pin him against his car. Careful, Tom, I whispered in his ear. Assault charges would look terrible in the newspaper, especially for someone already under federal investigation. I released him and stepped back. Tom straightened his jacket, his face flushed with humiliation and rage. This isn't over, he said. You're absolutely right. It's not over. It's barely started. I walked back to my truck and climbed into the driver's seat. Oh, and Tom? Tell Olivia her 24 hours expired 3 days ago. From now on, we do this the hard way. I drove away, leaving him standing next to his damaged car in the empty garage. In my rearview mirror, I watched him pull out his phone and start dialing frantically. The call came 20 minutes later. What the hell did you do? Olivia's voice was shrill with panic. Tom said you threatened him. I introduced myself. Seemed like the polite thing to do, since he's been spending so much time with my wife. He could have you arrested. For what? Having a conversation in a parking garage? I'm sure the security cameras will show it was very civil. There was a pause, and I could hear Tom's voice in the background, though I couldn't make out the words. Adam, you need to stop this right now. Tom has lawyers. He has connections. He can make your life very difficult. Funny thing about connections, Olivia. They work both ways. Did you know Tom's been stealing money from your company? That's ridiculous. Tom's business is very successful. Is it? When's the last time you actually looked at his books? Or talked to his accountant? Or wondered why he needs to borrow money from your employer to maintain his lifestyle? Another pause, longer this time. You're lying. Am I? Ask him about the offshore accounts. Ask him about the fake invoices. Ask him why the FBI is investigating his city contracts. The FBI? Her voice was smaller now, uncertain. Olivia, you've been played. Tom didn't steal you from me. He recruited you. You're not his girlfriend. You're his accomplice. The line went silent. I spent the rest of the day in my office, coordinating with my team. Kenna had expanded her surveillance to include Olivia's workplace, and the results were illuminating. She's been in meetings with HR all afternoon, Kenna reported. 3 different people have gone into the conference room, and none of them looked happy when they came out. What about Tom? He's been on the phone nonstop. Called 4 different lawyers, 2 accountants, and someone at City Hall who hung up on him. Detective Chen arrived at 4 p.m. with updates from the official investigation. The Patterson contract approval has been delayed pending review, she announced. Seems someone filed a complaint about irregularities in the bidding process. Someone? Dutch asked with mock innocence. A concerned citizen who provided very detailed documentation of potential fraud. The complaint was so thorough that the city attorney had no choice but to launch a formal investigation. Elliot looked up from his legal briefs. How long will that take? 6 to 8 weeks, minimum, long enough for us to build a comprehensive case against Mr. Beale and anyone who might have been helping him. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Back off, or you'll regret it. I showed the message to the group. Tom's getting desperate, Marcus observed. Desperate people make stupid mistakes. Let's help him make a few more, I said. The second phase of our operation launched at midnight. While Tom and Olivia slept peacefully in their respective beds, Kenna and Marcus were busy with what they euphemistically called digital archaeology. By morning, Tom's business email had been mysteriously forwarded to several investigative journalists. His client list had found its way to his competitors, and his financial records had been anonymously submitted to the IRS. But the masterpiece was Olivia's company email account. Every message she'd sent to Tom over the past 8 months, including several that discussed moving money between accounts and hiding expenses from her boss, had been compiled into a comprehensive report and delivered to her HR department, the company's board of directors, and their external auditors. The email arrived at 6 a.m. sharp, just as Olivia was getting ready for work. I was having coffee at a diner across the street from her office building when she arrived. Even from a distance, I could see the tension in her shoulders, the quick, nervous way she walked. She lasted exactly 47 minutes in the building before security escorted her out. I watched from my window booth as she stood on the sidewalk, clutching a cardboard box of personal items, her face a mask of shock and disbelief. She pulled out her phone and made a call, probably to Tom, but whoever answered didn't stay on the line long. My phone rang. "You bastard," she said without preamble. "You got me fired." "I didn't get you fired, Olivia. You got yourself fired when you decided to steal money from your employer to fund your boyfriend's lifestyle." "I never stole anything." "The invoices say otherwise. So do the hotel receipts you charged to the company. So do the consulting fees you authorized for services that were never provided." Tom said those were legitimate business expenses. "And you believed him? The same man who's been hiding millions of dollars in offshore accounts? The same man who's currently under federal investigation for contract fraud?" I could hear her crying now, the sound muffled as if she'd covered the phone with her hand. "This is all your fault," she said finally. "If you'd just signed the divorce papers and walked away, none of this would have happened." "You're right," I said. "If I'd been a good little victim and let you destroy my life without consequences, you'd still have a job and a future with your criminal boyfriend. But here's the thing, Olivia. I'm not that kind of victim. What do you want?" "I want you to understand that actions have consequences. I want you to realize that betrayal is a choice, and choices have prices. And I want you to know that this is just the beginning." I ended the call and walked outside. Across the street, Olivia was still standing on the sidewalk, looking lost and defeated. For just a moment, I felt a flicker of the old affection, a ghost of the love I'd once felt for this woman. Then I remembered her voice on that first voicemail, dripping with contempt and certainty that I was too weak to fight back. The feeling passed. Tom Beale's penthouse apartment smelled like rotting fish when he came home from his crisis management meetings on Friday night. The smell hit him the moment he opened the door, a thick, nauseating stench that seemed to cling to the walls and seep into the expensive furniture. I know this because Marcus had placed cameras throughout the building, and we watched Tom's reaction in real time from my office. The look of confusion, then disgust, then dawning realization that someone had been inside his sanctuary was absolutely priceless. "What the hell?" he muttered, covering his nose with his sleeve as he moved through the apartment. The smell was strongest near the air conditioning vents, where I'd strategically placed several pounds of fish heads and shrimp shells before sealing them inside the ductwork. "It's called aromatherapy, Tom," I said to the screen, earning a chuckle from Dutch. Tom spent 20 minutes searching his apartment, looking for the source of the smell before giving up and calling building maintenance. While he waited for help to arrive, he discovered my other little gifts. His furniture had been rearranged, nothing damaged, just moved. His couch now faced the wrong direction. His dining room table was in the living room. His bedroom dresser blocked the bathroom door. Every picture on the walls had been rotated exactly 90 degrees. But the masterpiece was on his pillow. A single .45 caliber bullet, pristine and gleaming, placed precisely in the center of his Egyptian cotton pillowcase. Tom stared at it for a long moment before carefully picking it up with a tissue. His hands were shaking as he examined it, probably wondering if it was a threat or just a message. It was a message. The same caliber I'd carried in Afghanistan, the same ammunition I'd used to protect my country and my brothers in arms. Now it was protecting my honor and my future. My phone rang. Tom's name appeared on the screen. "You're insane," he said without preamble. "Breaking and entering is a felony. I'm calling the police." "You should definitely do that," I replied calmly. "I'm sure they'll be very interested in how someone got past your building's security system. Might even launch an investigation into whether you have any enemies. Could be embarrassing if they find those offshore accounts during their inquiry." "You can't prove I have offshore accounts." "Can't I? Cayman National Bank, account number 847291. Balance as of yesterday, $1.2 million. Swiss Credit International, account number 4429887. Balance $650,000. Should I continue?" The silence stretched for nearly 30 seconds. "What do you want?" he asked finally. "I want you to understand that your life is no longer private. I want you to realize that nowhere is safe. I want you to know that every time you close your eyes, you'll wonder what you'll find when you open them. This is harassment. This is justice. You stole my wife, my home, and my peace of mind. Now I'm going to steal yours." I hung up and turned to my team, who had been listening to the conversation on speaker. "Phase 3? Kenna asked. "Phase 3, I confirmed. The next morning, Tom's humiliation went public. It started with a simple email blast to every member of the Baltimore Security Contractors Association, a professional organization that included most of the major firms in the city. The email contained a detailed breakdown of Tom's fraudulent billing practices, complete with copies of fake invoices and bank records showing the money trail. By noon, 3 of his biggest clients had canceled their contracts. By 2 p.m., the local news had picked up the story. By 5 p.m., Tom Beale was trending on social media. But the real coup de grace came at 7 p.m. during the annual Contractors Association dinner at the Marriott downtown. Tom had planned to attend the event as a way of damage control, probably hoping to charm his way out of trouble with his usual combination of smooth talk and expensive wine. Instead, he walked into an ambush. Marcus had arranged for the hotel's audiovisual team to receive a special presentation that was supposed to be Tom's speech about industry ethics. What actually appeared on the screens throughout the ballroom was a carefully edited compilation of Tom's phone calls over the past week. His voice filled the room, discussing bribery, contract manipulation, and his plans to flee the country if the federal investigation got too close. The audience of security professionals, city officials, and potential clients listened in stunned silence as Tom essentially confessed to multiple felonies. The presentation ended with a recording of his conversation with Olivia from earlier that day, in which he blamed her for their current problems and suggested she might need to take the fall to protect his business. Tom tried to leave, but the crowd had surrounded him. Questions flew from every direction. Is it true you've been bribing city officials? How much money did you steal? Did you really throw your girlfriend under the bus? Someone had called the police, and within minutes, Tom found himself in handcuffs, being led out of the hotel while cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions. I watched the whole thing from the hotel bar, nursing a whiskey and enjoying the show. Detective Chen sat next to me, also enjoying the spectacle. That was beautifully orchestrated, she said, though I'm sure you had nothing to do with that audiovisual malfunction. Technical difficulties happen, I replied innocently, especially when you're dealing with older equipment and inexperienced operators. Of course. Just like Tom's apartment security system must have malfunctioned when someone rearranged his furniture. These old buildings have terrible security. Really, it's a wonder more people don't have break-ins. Detective Chen smiled. You know we can't use any of this in court, right? The recordings, the break-in evidence, the financial documents, it's all inadmissible because of how it was obtained. I'm not trying to convict him in court, I said. I'm trying to destroy his life the same way he tried to destroy mine. Courts are for justice. This is about revenge. And your wife? As if summoned by the question, Olivia appeared at the bar. She looked terrible, hair disheveled, makeup smeared, wearing the same clothes she'd been fired in 2 days earlier. She'd obviously been crying. Adam, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. We need to talk. Detective Chen finished her drink and stood. I'll leave you two alone. Adam, thanks for the information. It's been very helpful. After she left, Olivia slid onto the bartender and ordered a double vodka tonic. Her hands shook as she lifted the glass. Tom's been arrested, she said. I heard. Something about fraud and conspiracy charges. He told me you set him up, that you planted evidence and recorded private conversations. Did he? What do you think? She took a long drink before answering. I think Tom's been lying to me about a lot of things. I think I've been incredibly stupid, and I think you're not the man I thought I married. Which man did you think you married? Someone weaker. Someone who would just accept what happened and walk away quietly. She looked at me with something that might have been respect or might have been fear. I underestimated you. Yes, you did. The FBI came to see me today. They want me to testify against Tom. Are you going to? I don't know. They said if I cooperate, they might not charge me as an accomplice, but if I don't? She shrugged helplessly. They have evidence that I helped him steal money from my company. Emails, financial records, hotel receipts. They said someone provided them with a very comprehensive file. Imagine that. Was it you? I signaled the bartender for another whiskey. Does it matter? The evidence is real, isn't it? You did help him steal that money. I thought it was legitimate. Tom said he was providing security consultations. And you never asked to see the work product? Never wondered why he needed to meet in hotel rooms instead of offices? Never questioned why the invoices were always for round numbers with no itemized services? Olivia's face crumpled. I was in love. I thought he loved me too. He loved your access to company funds and your willingness to look the other way. You weren't his girlfriend, Olivia. You were his accomplice. So what happens now? I studied her face, looking for any trace of the woman I'd fallen in love with 10 years ago. She was still beautiful, even disheveled and desperate. But something fundamental had changed. Maybe in her, maybe in me, maybe in both of us. Now you face the consequences of your choices, I said. You can cooperate with the FBI and hope for leniency. You can hire a lawyer and fight the charges. You can run away and hope they don't find you, but you can't undo what you've done, and you can't go back to the way things were. What about us? There is no us. You made sure of that when you decided Tom was a better option than your husband. She started crying again, the kind of desperate sobs that come from realizing your life has fallen apart and there's no one to blame but yourself. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, Adam. I never meant for it to go this far." "Yes, you did. You meant for me to be destroyed while you rode off into the sunset with your wealthy boyfriend. The only thing you're sorry about is that it didn't work." I left money on the bar and stood to leave. Olivia grabbed my arm. "Please," she said. "Can't we work something out? Can't we fix this?" I looked down at her hand on my arm, then into her eyes. For just a moment, I saw the woman who used to laugh at my jokes and fall asleep in my arms. Then I remembered her voicemail, her cruelty, her absolute certainty that I was too weak to fight back. "You had 24 hours to apologize," I said, gently removing her hand from my arm. "You chose war instead. Now live with the consequences." I walked away, leaving her alone at the bar with her tears and her regrets. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles in the war she'd started. But tonight, for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was winning. The emergency hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m. Monday morning in Judge Patricia Morrison's courtroom. By 8:45, the hallway outside was packed with lawyers, reporters, and curious onlookers who'd been following the Tom Beale scandal in the local news. I sat on a bench near the courtroom entrance, wearing my best suit and watching Olivia pace nervously near the water fountain. She'd hired Margaret Steinberg, one of Baltimore's most expensive divorce attorneys, though I wondered how she was paying the retainer given her current unemployment status. Tom was notably absent, having spent the weekend in federal custody pending his bail hearing. "Nervous?" Elliot asked, settling onto the bench beside me. "Should I be?" "Olivia's lawyer is good. She's going to argue that you're a dangerous stalker who's been harassing her client and manipulating evidence. She'll claim everything we've presented is tainted by illegal surveillance and breaking and entering." "Can she prove that?" "She doesn't have to prove it. She just has to create reasonable doubt about the evidence's legitimacy." At exactly 9 a.m., we filed into Judge Morrison's courtroom. She was a stern woman in her 60s with silver hair and the kind of penetrating stare that made lawyers check their facts twice before speaking. "This is an emergency hearing regarding the dissolution of marriage between Adam and Olivia Kingman," she announced. "I've reviewed the preliminary filings, and I must say, this is one of the most unusual cases I've seen in 30 years on the bench." Margaret Steinberg stood first. "Your Honor, my client is the victim of a systematic campaign of harassment and intimidation by her estranged husband. Mr. Kingman has used his background in military intelligence to illegally surveil Mrs. Kingman, break into private property, and manipulate evidence to support his divorce claims." "Those are serious allegations, Ms. Steinberg. Do you have proof?" "We have circumstantial evidence suggesting Mr. Kingman had access to private communications and financial records that could only have been obtained through illegal means." Judge Morrison turned to Elliot. "Mr. Griggs, how do you respond?" Elliot stood, carrying a thick folder of documents. "Your Honor, Mr. Kingman is the victim of a conspiracy between his wife and her lover to defraud both him and the city of Baltimore. Every piece of evidence we're presenting was obtained through legal means by licensed private investigators and financial forensics experts." "And the break-in at Mr. Beale's apartment?" "We have no knowledge of any break-in, Your Honor. If Mr. Beale's security was compromised, perhaps he should have invested in better locks instead of offshore bank accounts." A ripple of laughter went through the courtroom. Judge Morrison banged her gavel. "Mr. Griggs, please stick to the facts. Ms. Steinberg, present your case." For the next hour, Olivia's lawyer painted a picture of me as a dangerous, obsessed ex-husband who'd used my military training to destroy an innocent woman's life. She presented Olivia as a victim of both Tom's manipulation and my revenge. It was a compelling narrative, and I could see some of the observers nodding along. Olivia played her part perfectly, dabbing at her eyes with tissues and looking appropriately traumatized. Then Elliot stood up. "Your Honor, I'd like to present Exhibit A, Mrs. Kingman's own words." He activated the courtroom's audio system and played Olivia's original voicemail, the one where she'd gloated about taking everything I owned and suggested I'd get nothing in the divorce. The courtroom fell silent as her voice filled the room, dripping with contempt and satisfaction. When it ended, several jurors were staring at Olivia with obvious disapproval. "Exhibit B," Elliot continued, financial records showing systematic embezzlement from Mrs. Kingman's former employer, with funds being transferred to accounts controlled by Thomas Beale. He distributed copies of bank statements, invoices, and transfer records. The paper trail was damning and comprehensive. "Exhibit C, hotel receipts showing Mrs. Kingman charged romantic encounters with Mr. Beale to her company's expense account, totaling over $40,000 in fraudulent charges." More documents circulated through the courtroom. I watched Olivia's face grow paler with each revelation. And finally, Exhibit D. Recorded conversations between Mrs. Kingman and Mr. Beale discussing their plans to hide assets and leave Mr. Kingman with nothing. The recordings played, and this time there was no mistaking the calculated nature of their conspiracy. Olivia's voice was clear and unmistakable as she discussed transferring money to hidden accounts and ensuring I couldn't access any of our joint assets. When the audio ended, Judge Morrison stared at Olivia for a long moment. "Mrs. Kingman," she said finally, "these recordings appear to show you conspiring to defraud your husband and commit perjury in this court. How do you explain this?" Margaret Steinberg whispered frantically in Olivia's ear, but my soon-to-be ex-wife just sat there, looking defeated. I was angry," Olivia said finally. "I said things I didn't mean." "You said you'd been planning this for months. You said you'd already moved assets to prevent Mr. Kingman from accessing them. Were those statements true or false?" Olivia looked around the courtroom desperately, as if searching for an escape route. "I invoke my Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination." Judge Morrison's expression hardened. "Ms. Steinberg, I'm going to give you 10 minutes to confer with your client. When we reconvene, I expect honest answers to my questions, or I'll hold Mrs. Kingman in contempt." During the recess, I watched Olivia and her lawyer argue in hushed tones near the windows. Margaret Steinberg looked increasingly frustrated, while Olivia seemed to be falling apart. Detective Chen appeared at my elbow. "How's it going?" "Better than expected. Turns out judges don't like being lied to." "Speaking of lies, we arrested Tom's accountant this morning. He's been very cooperative about explaining how the money laundering operation worked. Your wife's name came up frequently in his statement." "Is she going to be arrested?" "Depends on what she tells the judge today. If she continues to lie under oath, we'll have no choice but to charge her with perjury in addition to the fraud counts." When court reconvened, Judge Morrison didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Mrs. Kingman, I'll ask you again. Did you conspire with Thomas Beale to hide marital assets and defraud your husband?" Olivia looked at her lawyer, who nodded reluctantly. "Yes," she whispered. "Did you use company funds to pay for personal expenses related to your extramarital affair?" "Yes." "Did you lie to this court about your knowledge of Mr. Beale's criminal activities?" "Yes." Judge Morrison made notes on her legal pad. "Mr. Griggs, what is your client seeking in this divorce?" Elliot stood. "Your Honor, Mr. Kingman seeks dissolution of the marriage, recovery of all marital assets, including funds that were illegally transferred, and compensation for legal fees and damages resulting from Mrs. Kingman's fraudulent activities." "Mrs. Kingman, do you contest these requests?" Margaret Steinberg started to stand, but Olivia put a hand on her arm. "No, Your Honor," Olivia said quietly. "I don't contest them." "Very well. I'm granting the divorce and awarding Mr. Kingman full recovery of marital assets, plus punitive damages of $50,000. Mrs. Kingman, you have 30 days to comply with this order or face contempt charges." The gavel came down with a sharp crack that seemed to echo through the silent courtroom. As people filed out, I caught sight of Olivia sitting alone at the defendant's table, staring at her hands. Her lawyer was already packing up, probably calculating how much of her retainer she'd earned for a losing case. Detective Chen approached Olivia with 2 uniformed officers. "Mrs. Kingman," she said formally, "you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, embezzlement, and perjury. You have the right to remain silent." I watched them lead Olivia away in handcuffs, her head down and her shoulders shaking. A few reporters snapped photos, but most of the crowd had already dispersed. "How do you feel?" Elliot asked as we walked down the courthouse steps. "Like I should feel more satisfied than I do," I admitted. 6 months ago, I thought I had a happy marriage and a stable life. Now I'm divorced, my wife is going to prison, and her boyfriend is facing federal charges." "Regrets?" I thought about that as we reached the street. A year ago, if someone had told me I'd be capable of the systematic destruction I'd just orchestrated, I wouldn't have believed them. But then, a year ago, I'd also believed my wife loved me and my marriage was solid. "No regrets," I said finally. "She made her choices. I just made sure she lived with the consequences." My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This isn't over. You destroyed my life, and I'm going to destroy yours. T." I showed the message to Elliot, who frowned. "Tom's supposed to be in federal custody. Apparently he made bail, or someone's sending messages on his behalf. What are you going to do?" I looked up at the courthouse where I'd just won the most important battle of my life, then at the city skyline where Tom Beale was somewhere out there, probably planning his revenge. "I'm going home," I said, "and if Tom wants to continue this war, he'll find out that I'm much better at it than he is." The storm hit Baltimore at 11:47 p.m. on Tuesday night, bringing with it the kind of thunder that rattles windows and lightning that turns the sky purple. I was sitting in my home office, the spare bedroom of the apartment I'd rented after Olivia changed the locks, monitoring the security feeds from my old townhouse. The house was mine again, legally speaking. Judge Morrison's order had been crystal clear, and Olivia's lawyer had advised her not to contest the property settlement. But I hadn't moved back in yet. Something told me Tom Beale wasn't finished with me, and I wanted to be ready when he made his move. I was right. At 12:15 a.m., motion sensors triggered around the townhouse perimeter. My phone lit up with alerts from the security system I'd installed. Cameras, microphones, and proximity alarms that would make Fort Knox jealous. On my laptop screen, I watched Tom Beale climb over the back fence, dressed in black clothes and carrying a crowbar. He moved clumsily, like a man who'd been drinking or someone whose nerves were shot. Probably both. I speed-dialed Dutch, who answered on the first ring despite the late hour. "He's here," I said. "On my way. ETA 15 minutes. Next, I called Detective Chen. "Tom Beale is breaking into my house. I'm going to confront him." "Adam, don't do anything stupid. We'll have patrol units there in 10 minutes. 10 minutes might be too long. He's got a crowbar and nothing left to lose." I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, but not before activating the special security protocols I'd installed in the townhouse. If Tom wanted to play games in my house, he was going to discover that I'd learned a few tricks during my years in special forces. The drive took 8 minutes through empty streets slick with rain. I parked 2 blocks away and approached the house on foot, using the storm's noise to cover my movement. Tom had managed to pry open the back door and was inside, moving through the house with a flashlight. I could track his progress through the security app on my phone, kitchen, living room, stairs to the second floor. I slipped in through the front door, which I'd left unlocked for exactly this purpose. The house was dark, except for Tom's flashlight beam dancing across the walls upstairs. I could hear him moving around in what used to be my bedroom, probably looking for something to steal or destroy. That's when I activated the first trap. Every light in the house came on at once, accompanied by a piercing alarm that would wake anyone. Tom's flashlight beam froze, then started moving frantically as he tried to figure out what was happening. "Welcome to my house, Tom," I said, my voice echoing through the intercom system I'd installed in every room. "I've been expecting you." The sound of breaking glass came from upstairs, probably Tom putting his crowbar through a window or mirror. "You destroyed my life," he shouted, his voice carrying down the stairs. "My business is gone. My reputation is ruined. The FBI seized all my accounts." "Sounds like a personal problem," I replied through the intercom. "Maybe you shouldn't have stolen my wife and my money." I moved to the base of the stairs, staying in the shadows while Tom thrashed around upstairs. The security cameras showed him in the master bedroom, swinging the crowbar at furniture and walls like a man possessed. "Come up here and face me like a man," he yelled. "I don't think so, Tom. You're the one who broke into my house. You're the one with a weapon. You're the one making threats. I'm just an innocent homeowner protecting his property." That's when I activated trap number 2. The smoke detectors throughout the house began releasing a thick, white fog, harmless theatrical smoke, but dense enough to cut visibility to 0. Within seconds, the entire second floor was shrouded in an impenetrable cloud. Tom's cursing echoed through the house as he stumbled around blind, coughing and choking on the artificial fog. "You psychotic bastard," he screamed. "What is this stuff?" "Just a little atmospheric enhancement," I said calmly. "Don't worry, it's non-toxic. Unlike your personality." Through the security feed, I watched Tom feel his way along the walls, trying to find the stairs. He was panicked now, swinging the crowbar at shadows and jumping at every sound. That's when the final trap activated. Hidden speakers throughout the house began playing a recording I'd prepared specifically for this moment, Tom's own voice, taken from the phone calls Kenna had intercepted weeks earlier. "I need to accelerate the timeline," Tom's recorded voice filled the house. "Adam Kingman isn't going to roll over like we thought. She's just a means to an end," another snippet played. "Once I get access to her company's accounts, I can dump her and move on to the next mark. If the investigation gets too close, Olivia might have to take the fall. Better her than me." Each quote was more damning than the last, and I could hear Tom screaming in frustration as his own words convicted him. "Stop it," he yelled. "Turn it off." "Why, Tom? Don't you like hearing the truth? This is what you really think of my wife. This is who you really are." The front door burst open, and Dutch charged in with Marcus and Kenna right behind him. All 3 were armed and looked ready for war. "Where is he?" Dutch asked. "Upstairs, trapped in the smoke. He's got a crowbar, but he can't see 3 feet in front of him." "Police are 2 minutes out," Kenna reported, monitoring her radio scanner. That's when Tom made his mistake. Blinded by smoke and driven by rage, He tried to rush down the stairs. But the theatrical fog had made the steps slippery, and he lost his footing halfway down. The crowbar went flying as he tumbled, landing in a heap at the bottom of the staircase. I stepped out of the shadows as he struggled to get up, his face red from the fall and his eyes streaming from the smoke. "Hello, Tom," I said calmly. "Having a rough night?" He lunged at me, but 12 years of military training kicked in. I sidestepped his clumsy attack and used his momentum to send him crashing into the wall. Before he could recover, Dutch and Marcus had him pinned to the floor. "You ruined everything," Tom gasped, red liquid running from his nose. "I had it all planned out. The contracts, the money, the new life. You destroyed it all." "I didn't destroy anything, Tom. I just refused to be your victim." Detective Chen arrived with backup just as we were zip-tying Tom's hands behind his back. She surveyed the scene, the smoke, the lights, the speakers still playing Tom's incriminating recordings, and shook her head. "Elaborate security system you've got here, Adam." "I believe in being prepared." "And the smoke?" "Fire suppression system malfunction. These old houses have terrible wiring." She looked at Tom, who was ranting about illegal surveillance and entrapment, while paramedics checked his injuries. "Mr. Beale," she said formally, "you're under arrest for breaking and entering, attempted assault, and violation of your bail conditions. You have the right to remain silent, which I strongly recommend you exercise." As they loaded Tom into the ambulance, he'd need stitches for the cuts on his face, he looked at me through the rear window with pure hatred. "This isn't over," he mouthed. I walked over to the ambulance and tapped on the window. When he leaned closer, I spoke quietly so only he could hear. "Yes, it is. Your business is gone. Your money is frozen. Your reputation is destroyed. You're going to prison for a very long time, and when you get out, you'll be a middle-aged ex-con with no prospects and no future. Meanwhile, I'll be living in my house, running my business, and enjoying the life you tried to steal from me." I stepped back as the ambulance pulled away, its red lights disappearing into the storm. Dutch clapped me on the shoulder. "Feel better?" I looked around at the house where I'd planned to spend the rest of my life with Olivia. The walls were scarred from Tom's crowbar, the air still thick with artificial smoke, and the floors wet from the rain that had blown in through the broken windows. But it was mine again, legally, financially, and morally mine. "Yeah," I said, "I feel better." Detective Chen approached with her final paperwork. "The DA wants to know if you'll testify at Tom's trial. With the breaking and entering charges added to the fraud case, he's looking at 15 to 20 years. "What about Olivia?" "She took a plea deal. 5 years, with possibility of parole in 3 if she testifies against Tom and makes full restitution to her former employer." I nodded. It seemed appropriate. Olivia had been Tom's accomplice, but she'd also been his victim in some ways. She'd pay for her crimes, but she'd have a chance to rebuild her life afterward. Tom, on the other hand, had orchestrated the entire conspiracy. He'd stolen from the city, manipulated my wife, and tried to destroy my life for his own profit. He deserved everything that was coming to him. "I'll testify," I told Detective Chen. As the police finished their investigation and my team helped me assess the damage to the house, I stood in my living room and thought about the past month. 4 weeks ago, I'd been a happily married man with a successful business and a bright future. Tonight, I was divorced, my house was trashed, and 2 people I'd once cared about were headed to prison. But I was still standing. More than that, I was victorious. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Saw the news about Tom's arrest. Heard Olivia took a plea deal. You always were tougher than you looked. Congratulations on winning your war. A friend." I smiled and deleted the message. Then I walked through my damaged house, making mental notes about repairs and renovations. The place would need work, but it had good bones. With time and effort, it could be beautiful again. Just like my life. Thunder crashed overhead as I stood in my reclaimed home, surrounded by the wreckage of the war my wife had started and I had finished. Tom Beale was in custody, facing decades in prison. Olivia was awaiting sentencing, her career and reputation destroyed. And I was exactly where I belonged, in my own house, master of my own fate, victorious in a battle I'd never wanted to fight but had been forced to win. The storm was passing, and morning wasn't far away.